Immigration and border security, a front line in the race for the White House. Big stakes, but also big money and big questions, with the same private contractors from Iraq now building a high-tech Fortress America.
On the U.S.-Mexico border, I'm Avi Lewis, and this is Frontline USA. Ask a presidential hopeful about immigration these days, and the first words you're likely to hear are, "First, we must secure the border." Secure the border. It's a comforting mantra that takes on a very different ring when you're actually on the border, looking at the unmanned drones and armored vehicles and other symbols of a militarized zone. Borders are big business these days. The Bush administration boasts of 302 miles of border fence built, of hiring 9,000 new border guards, doubling the number since 2001. But the real financial frontier is border technology, like Boeing's virtual fence, mile after mile of surveillance towers, bristling with security technologies. Final price tag, $2.5 billion. And Boeing's not the only contractor cashing in. In many ways, the war in Iraq is coming home, with some of the best-known brand names in modern warfare rushing to position themselves in this lucrative new market. So, what role should private contractors play in the life-and-death world of border security? That's the question for this week's Frontline Focus.
I want to have a secure border, and that means let's look more at technology, more at personnel.
We've got to restore trust in government and secure our borders.
Surveillance, deploying effective technology, that's going to be the better approach.
Technology to secure the U.S.-Mexico border. It's one of the only policies of the election season that enjoys support from both parties. And so the 2,000-mile border with Mexico looks like the future to big companies with contracts in their eyes. One of the first to get there was Boeing, America's second-largest defense contractor, with Project 28, a so-called virtual fence to police 28 miles of border near Tucson, Arizona, a high-traffic area for migrants. To see what it looks like at ground level, we visited Arivaca, a small community where a string of Boeing surveillance towers runs right through residential areas. Tom Kay's property hugs the border. He claims that hundreds of migrant workers pass through his land every day.
You know, whatever they can do is good, and what they're doing is good. These towers, these cameras, they're helping a lot, and if they help a lot, I like them. They don't hurt anything.
But for many in this community, the virtual fence is not so benign.
I think it's an over-expenditure for no purpose other than just a political purpose of rewarding Boeing Corporation for its contributions to the Republican Party. I don't find anything that to be realistic that could stop the inflow, except in economic changes on both sides of the border, I suspect.
There is also an even more basic question. Do the towers actually work?
I have spoken directly to the Border Patrol agents who are involved in operating that system over the last few months and who have seen it produce actual results in terms of identifying and allowing the apprehension of people who are illegally smuggling across the border.
But according to the Government Accountability Office, the software is flawed and sensors are tricked by rain and other environmental factors. In other words, the towers, for all their futuristic sensors, can't tell the difference between coyotes, the human smugglers, and coyotes, the desert animals. Even the border crossers themselves are unimpressed.
It's not very efficient, the equipment. Last night we tried to go on top of a hill and signal help, but nobody stopped. No helicopter stops or anything. They didn't even realize that we were there. I think the equipment is just there to scare people. They didn't search very well for us anyway.
We met Oscar and his friend when we made the rounds with Isla Abernathy, a volunteer with Samaritan Patrols, a group that looks for migrants in the desert and brings them food and water. Isla knows the drill all too well. If Oscar gets picked up, he won't be processed by private contractors. Border Patrol is one thing still done by federal government employees, but transporting migrants, that is another business opportunity.
Whack and Hut is a contract service to transport migrants who've been picked up in the field by Border Patrol.
I will do that. And what's your name?
My name?
Yeah.
My name is not important.
Oh, okay. First, I don't think the screening is good. I think you're going to get people who have been bounced out of law enforcement and even Border Patrol from other areas. They don't receive even as much orientation as Border Patrol people do.
Undocumented workers picked up by Border Patrol used to be sent back to Mexico quickly. But recently, a new federal policy is being tested called Operation Streamline. Border crossers without papers are now arrested and put in jail while awaiting trial on mostly minor charges. The administration insists that the approach is a deterrent and that it's working. But with thousands more people now being jailed for up to 6 months, it's providing a wave of new inputs to yet another growing industry: private prisons for immigrants.
This is the entrance to Corrections Corporation of America's Eloy Detention Center.
The Eloy Detention Center is run by the Corrections Corporation of America, the country's largest operator of private prisons. Hit by a string of scandals from poor prisoner treatment to riots and escapes, by the year 2000 the company's stock price was at an all-time low. Then came the boom in detaining immigrants, now the fastest growing prison population in America. Since 2002, CCA's stock price has more than quadrupled.
Well, these are contracts, right? And the raw material for your industry is a human being in a cell. So it gets down to like, what is this prisoner worth to you for every day that they spend in this cell? Per diem rates range between $50, $60 a person per day, which is quite a lot of money.
CCA declined the opportunity to talk to us or give us access to the Eloy facility.
Here. Is there any way for us to get pictures of the facility?
But the company and the philosophy of privatization has powerful supporters in America.
This notion that somehow we can't use private security to do law enforcement activities, just not true. Matter of fact, we do that in the United States all the time. If you look at many of our border communities in the United States, they have very, very small police forces. In some cases, you have county police forces. They might have, for the entire county, they might have 1 or 2 police cars on the road during the day with 1 county sheriff in them. They're never going to have the kind of workforce to really do that community policing. So the question is how can you kind of ramp up community policing very quickly? Private sector assets is one way to help do that.
That kind of thinking has been a hallmark of the Bush years, which have seen the overall market for privatized government services double to $400 billion a year. Most of that growth has been in warfare in Iraq and Afghanistan. But with new government policies opening the border security market, it's no surprise the big contractors are coming home. Kellogg Brown & Root, an offshoot of Halliburton, has been hired to build a huge expansion of immigration processing, detention, and deportation.
KBR is growing to a $14 billion a year business. The war in Iraq is not going to last forever. It's hard to go from being a $3 billion a year industry to being a $14 billion a year industry, right? So you're going out and you're looking for new markets. And that's what these companies are doing.
It's a name that we've heard many times before, Blackwater. Iraqi officials accuse the Blackwater contractors of randomly firing on civilians
as an excessive use of force, and that there was no evidence Blackwater's team
Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater, testified before a House Oversight panel today.
Blackwater, without doubt the most controversial private contractor in Iraq. From its base in North Carolina, what Blackwater claims is the world's largest training facility, it has trained more than 100,000 U.S. law enforcement officers. Now, the company has started to manufacture surveillance blimps, clearly aimed at the border market. And last year, Blackwater announced plans for an 824-acre training facility just 8 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border, in the small community of Potrero, California. That sparked an intense community debate about what firing ranges, tactical driving tracks, and an influx of men with guns would do to a quiet border town.
I think it's good for the community. You know, I personally think it is. People can get jobs. You know, they'll hire people that can meet the criteria. That's one of our deals that we voted for as a planning group. Hire local people first before you go outside. So that's helping the community. That's helping people here.
But you need to make the case for why Blackwater belongs in this community if there are other people in the community saying that it has no place here?
They're just going to house a few people here. And they are not going to be training them all the time. It's a training facility.
Well, 300 a week, Phil. 300 trainees a week is the plan.
When it's at maximum. It could be years for it to be that. But
this is the wrong community for it. This is a small, quiet, rural community. This is not a place to bring 300 guys every week to train in armaments. The privatization of government and the privatization of industry is probably the worst thing that's been happening in the last 30 years around the world. You don't privatize the U.S. military. You don't privatize the Border Patrol. That's absolutely anti-American.
They're not going to hire them to protect the border. That's not the issue. That's making rumors again. That's another rumor you've gotten started. They're not going to do that.
And just days after we filmed this discussion, Blackwater announced that it was dropping its plans to build the training camp. A rare case of citizens turning back the contractor tide. Meanwhile, back in Arizona, Boeing's pilot project is over budget and out of time. The first 100 miles of virtual fence is now expected by 2011, 2 years after Boeing's current contract expires. Private companies are just that, very private.
Sir, you can't record me.
What's the problem with that?
I'll call Border Patrol right now, okay? I'm saying there's no videotaping out here.
Over several weeks, Frontline USA contacted Blackwater, Boeing, General Atomic Systems, DynCorp International, Northrop Grumman, Ericsson, Lockheed Martin, Sensor Technologies and Systems, the Corrections Corporation of America, and the GEO Group. All these companies either declined an interview or didn't respond to our requests. Yet another virtual fence. But this is one that actually works.
We've got to take a quick break, but stick around for more Frontline USA from the U.S.-Mexico border. Coming up, we take a ride with the Vigilante Minutemen, and we pop the bubble on media coverage of the campaign.